Hi, I'm Marty Nemko. This is part two in my series on careers related to COVID. Um, it's You can listen to this podcast, watch this YouTube video, and it's aired in prime time, 8:30 in the morning, 6:30 p.m. on Thursdays on KSFP Public Radio in San Francisco, 102.5 FM. Okay, anyway, the previous episode talked about careers that are likely to be viable even in this time of COVID. Today we're going to talk about self-employment in the time of COVID. And in fact, with 42 million people having lost their job amid the COVID shutdown, and unfortunately, many more likely to come, because there are very few people who predict that recovery will be a V or even a U in the next year or so. Many people are going to feel that their chances of getting a job would be better if they were self-employed, rather than compete with the zillions of other people who were looking for a job before, or open to looking for a good job before COVID, and now millions and millions more who are looking for work. So self-employment can be an option. Of course, everybody knows self-employment is dangerous. Most businesses, at least over half, go out of business within the first few years, but I like to think that the following at least give you your best shot of success if you have the basics for what it takes to be successfully self-employed, being a self-starter, you don't have to be book smart, but practically smart and being able to solve the day-to-day problems that exist all the time. You can't always have a consultant. And that you are cost conscious. You're less interested in having fancy facilities, a fancy office. If you can work from home, that's so much the better. And that you're resilient when the inevitable crap happens, that you will not wallow for very long, because the meter is always running. Every minute you're not making money, or if you're paying rent or hiring people, it's costing you money. So successful self-employed people are quite resilient. They get frustrated for a moment and then they move on. Okay, but assuming you have at least reasonable amounts of those key attributes of being self-employed, here are what I believe are some pockets of opportunity for self-employment, simple self-employment in the era of COVID. And by the way, I really believe in simple, not only because simple is good, there's less that can go wrong, but if you keep your costs down, you're going to have a little bit of cushion for the inevitable mistakes. The biggest reason businesses go out of business is they run out of money. And these businesses that I'm going to talk about require very little money and yet offer real potential for the right person to make money. So first, and it comes top of mind because of the George Floyd killing, is diversity consultant. We have made a decision de facto. Our media and colleges and many in the public have become convinced that we are a racist country, and that we need to both educate people more and reallocate resources more to African Americans specifically, not just stop chokeholds, but go well beyond that. And so I believe that there will be a growing market for what was already a big market for diversity consultants today. I think the more often used term is inclusion consultant. Of course, there are firms that hire, that have diversity consultants, but it may be that if you have the ability of being thoughtful, not shoving ideas down people's throats, but being thoughtful, verbal, a great listener, good facilitator under stress. Large companies and government aren't going to hire you as a single person probably, but perhaps small companies in an area that you already know something about, you might be able to make a living as a diversity consultant. Next, tracers. Here in the state of California, the Governor Newsom has said he wants to hire at least 10,000 tracers. Whatever you think about, the wisdom of trying to track down everybody who's been in contact with somebody who tests positive, when many of the people they were in contact with were strangers, perhaps in a supermarket or whatever. Nonetheless, that is what the public health officials who have the real ear of our politicians have been saying we must do. And so with 10,000 jobs just in California as contact tracers. If you like the idea of spending a lot of time on the phone, trying to track down people who've tested positive, motivating them to tell you everybody they're aware of that they've been in contact with, those jobs should be available. And I'm sure if you Google contact tracer, COVID tracers, jobs, you'll find a link. Beyond that, for more money, I can't imagine there's going to be a hell of a lot of people who are going to, the kind of numbers, 10,000 in California alone, who are going to be willing to go do that work for 17 to 25 an hour, which is what they say they're paying, with no benefits and part-time, and it's certainly not a career builder. It's just a dead end. Recruiter of tracers. Maybe you've worked for an employment agency. Maybe you are somebody who's just really resourceful or at finding people who'd be willing to do this, who are nonetheless good. They're normally requiring a bachelor's degree, even though they're only paying 17 to 25 an hour. They're saying that a bachelor's degree is required, at least in some jurisdictions. But if you think you could recruit, that might be a great way to make the government your customer, and the government, as has long been said, is the world's best customer. Think about being a recruiter of tracers, another self-employment opportunity in the time of COVID. With people educating at home now because of it was deemed wise to shut down the schools, and with the likelihood, no guarantee, but likelihood of a resurgence in the fall, which may necessitate shutting us in, including children, for sometime in the fall or winter. If you are somebody who is a teacher, who has been a homeschooling teacher yourself, or a homeschooling parent, just think you have the ability to train parents on how to do a good job of doing homeschooling. That could be a good self-employment opportunity. And again, notice none of these requires the cost of an inventory or an office. Your expenses are very low. We're going to talk later about how to market, how to get customers for each of these. Not each of these. I'm going to give some broad advice as to how to get customers, but I want to go through this. I have roughly a dozen of these self-employment ideas that are low cost, relatively low risk, and seem to hold viability in this time of COVID. Next is a home office consultant. Even if workers are allowed to come back to work, many employers are realizing that many workers are happier and actually more productive, less distracted working at home. Plus, childcare may be easier for those people at home. And so there's going to be ever more people working at home. And so I believe that there will be a need for home office consultants. How to set up the home office in terms of ergonomics, in terms of work-life balance, how to negotiate, make sure that you're not unduly interrupted by family and other concerns, how to do well in video conferencing. For example, there are ways to have, let's say you're home, where your computer is, your webcam is a mess. There are ways to have digital backgrounds, like on Zoom or whatever, that make it look like you have a nicer background, nicer home or office or whatever. So there's all kinds of ways that a home office consultant can be helpful to you. Then the next example of self-employment that may be viable in the time of COVID is a coach. A virtual coach. You can be working by Zoom, FaceTime, phone, whatever. And here are some examples of where coaching could be particularly viable. People, we're making a decision in this society to devalue the excess materialism, etc., so that increases desire for people to be writers and artists and actors and musicians, and these kind of small business owners. If you have the ability to be a coach to those people, that is, you have to have knowledge, of course, but you also have to be a good listener, good facilitator, good at coming up with solutions, and being collaborative and empowering. If that's you, think about whether you could be a virtual coach to aspiring writers, artists, actors, musicians, and small business owners. Or you can do what I do. I'm a career consultant. There's another example, something that I'm doing virtually all the time now. If you know a lot about the world of work, if you know a lot about motivating people, if you know a lot about the art of helping people land a job, the art of creating great LinkedIn profiles, resumes, how to maintain your ethics while still be persuasive in interviews, there's going to be there are a hell of a lot of people who are desperate right now amid the COVID shutdown, who are desperately looking for work. And people have asked me, hasn't your practice slowed down amid COVID? No, because it's kind of an essential service. If they are unemployed now suddenly, they desperately need the money. And so they are willing to take whatever money they have to pay as a career consultant. And okay, so that's another possibility for self-employment in time of COVID. Gardens, people who are at home now, both because of the COVID restrictions, but also I think people this is, but the George Floyd issue has been expanded beyond police brutality to the whole idea of capitalism. And so there are ever more people who are trying to live simpler, closer to the earth, less materialistic. And so you could be another kind of consultancy is helping people with their gardens, planting a vegetable garden, for example, or fruit trees in a backyard or whatever, planting raised beds, putting an irrigation system in. All those things are things that are people, obviously you need money to be able to buy these things, but if any small businesses are going to survive, it seems like businesses like that, helping people set up their gardens, especially vegetables and fruit gardens, talk about local, sustainable, organic. I mean, it checks all the boxes, and if we're forced to stay home, it gives us something to do. Being a consultant to people in their gardens can be a viable self-employment opportunity. More serious, a healthcare advocate. It's certainly been predicted that the first wave of COVID was going to result in a shortage of medical services, hospital beds, such that it turned out to be wrong. But if the experts are right this time, the second wave could be as bad or worse, and that could result in indeed difficulty getting the health care you need, not just obviously for COVID, but for all the diseases people desperately need medical help: cancer, heart disease, diabetes, and myriad other important but less common diseases. And especially if you're sick and if you don't have a very robust family member to advocate for you, you need somebody to fight with the insurance company or fight with the Medicare to get reimbursed for what you need, or simply fight with a hospital to get attention, because it's possible that, especially amid COVID-2, there is going to be a massive overdemand for healthcare services. So being an advocate, a healthcare advocate, could be a viable self-employment opportunity. Unfortunately, as already we're seeing, the COVID shutdown has caused countless small businesses, from small business owners to small restaurants, and of course the looting has also affected the ability of small businesses to stay alive. And so there is a self-employment need for business liquidators. People who have run a small restaurant have got ovens and tables and chairs and all kinds of kitchen equipment that has to be liquidated. And being a business liquidator is something you could do. Again, it doesn't require you to have inventory. You're getting rid of other people's inventories and making a broker's profit on the sale. That might be another viable self-employment thing. I should let you know what you're listening to. You're listening to How to Do Life, whether you're listening to the podcast or on San Francisco Public Radio, KSFP 102.5 in San Francisco. I am Marty Nemko. And stay with us. We'll be back in a moment with more ideas for self-employment in the time of COVID. And then critically, we'll focus the rest of the show on how to get customers. Welcome back. I'm Marty Nemko. This is How to Do Life. We're talking about self-employment in the time of COVID, because it is really difficult given the 42 million people who have already lost their job because of the COVID shutdown, and probably many more to come, that people will have a hard time landing a job. So if they feel forced to, or by choice, choosing to become self-employed. So I've offered some examples of self-employment. I'll just simply tick them off first. I have a couple more, and then I'm going to focus the rest of this show on how to go about getting customers. So I mentioned being a diversity consultant, being a recruiter of COVID contact tracers, being a home consultant to parents who are having to homeschool their kids now, being a consultant around home office issues, like setting up ergonomically, setting up your house for work-life balance, and so on. By the way, note again, these are all things that are relative. These are small self-employment things that are not just consistent with the time of COVID, but that they're low cost. Most businesses go out of business because they run out of money too quickly. And this because there's no inventory. Most of these can be run out of your own home. You've got far less cost and therefore far less risk. Other examples that I gave are virtual coach for everything from dating to online education, how to go about making more of an online education course, as well being a coach to wannabes these days with ever more, let's just say, anti-capitalist, anti-materialist ethos that has been risen to prominence as the activists after George Floyd are not just interested in stopping chokeholds, but they're using this as an opportunity to promote non-capitalist values. So there's many more people wanting to be these very non-capitalistic kind of workers, people, writers, artists, actors, musicians. Another example of careers that could be viable in this time of COVID, a career consultant with many people desperate for work, career consultant. Helping people with their gardens. It's part of that, non-capitalistic, grow your own, local, sustainable, organic, and many people are willing to do that but don't know how to create raised beds, what to plant, how to plant, irrigation. That may be a consulting opportunity for you. Healthcare, if we indeed have a resurgence of COVID-2, there's going to be a lot of people desperate to get access to the healthcare system who will have difficulty. Maybe you'll be the advocate for them, as well as fighting with insurance companies or Medicare to try to get things covered. Business liquidator, unfortunately the COVID shutdown is resulting in countless small businesses going out of business, helping them liquidate their inventory, their furniture, etc. And so now I want to talk about just one more of these self-employment opportunities, and then we'll talk about how to get customers. This is a little more of a long shot, but I deeply believe this. Companies are realizing that workers are doing quite well working at home. Less distraction, no commute, perhaps less childcare problems. And the companies can save office space. They don't need that incredibly expensive downtown real estate. So I believe many of them are going to close their downtown offices and move to small offices near where employees work for the occasional meeting once or twice a week. So there is going to be a need for people to convert these former downtown offices into apartments, probably small apartments, because there is a housing shortage. The housing prices are crazy. I think that's going to be a very potentially viable self-employment opportunity for somebody who either has or could acquire the ability to figure out how to convert commercial business property to apartments, and importantly, because there's so many government regulations involved, know how to work with the government to get them to approve these things in a reasonably timely fashion. That it comports both with the work at home ethos, the fact that if that traffic had been strangling, straitjacket-like, and people would like to work at home, and this desire for more accessible, lower cost, affordable housing. These are all, and the COVID work at home ethos. All those are vectors that would lead me to believe that there is a need for self-employed consultants who can help transition commercial businesses, commercial headquarter downtown offices into small apartments. Okay, now let's spend the rest of this, we have about 8 and a half minutes left, how to get customers. The most time-honored and accurate and potent truth is that most small businesses get their first set of clients through people they know. Because as a stranger, in generally, it's hard to get advertising is expensive, then they don't know who you are. There's so much advertising out there. It's the people who know and trust you. So usually starting your business, the best thing you can do is make a list of as many people as you can, they don't have to be in a position to hire you, but anybody who likes you and respects you, is to pitch them in a human way, whether it be by an email or a phone call or getting together. That should be your number one. Once you've created the idea for your business and really feel you're competent enough to open up shop and charge for what you do. And by the way, sometimes you want to do some work for free in some of these services until you feel you're worth charging. But at the point when you feel you're worth charging, contact everybody you know, 50, 100 people, explaining what you're doing, why you're good, and do they know somebody in a position to hire you. Don't say, can you hire me? Because it's too much pressure. But asking them, do you know somebody in a position to hire me? And when they say no, and usually they say, I'll think about it, I don't know, say, great, can I call you back in a month? If I'm still looking for clients, would you mind keeping your ears open in the meantime and letting me know if you come across somebody who might need my service? And if not, would you mind if I circle back in a month? They'll almost always say yes. And so now you're having 50 to 100 scouts. They won't be beating the bushes for you, but they may well, when they hear of some possibility, may tout you if they like and respect you. That is the most potent way to start a business in terms of getting clients. Costs you nothing. It's highly targeted. That's a great idea. Second is everybody, before you go to the paid advertising route, people generally are better or worse at one of these two things, either writing or speaking. If you could write an article for a local publication that explains what you do. So let's say you're a home garden consultant, explaining the 7 keys to planting your garden, doing the irrigation, what to plant now, whatever, or even better, a column. And then at the bottom you have a tagline that says, Mary Jones is helps home gardener, homeowners set up their gardens, and with a phone number and email. That could be a no-cost way to advertise, and in part, it's better than an advertisement because an article is more credible than an advertisement. So that's another technique. Third is, if you are going to advertise, it's really wise to niche your business, to come up with a sub-niche. So for example, if you are, let's say, take my career consultant. If you're just another general career consultant, career coach, career advisor, it's going to be very hard to distinguish yourself. And if you're marketing, you're having to market very broadly. But let's say you were used to be an accountant. If you can do career counseling specifically to accountants, it's easier to be more expert at it, and you can target your marketing into websites that cater to accountants. If you are an artist, you've been able to make a living as an artist, so you know something about how to make a living as an artist, pay for small little ads in websites that are frequented by artists. Far less cost than advertising anywhere else. Let me see. I want to see if I can think of one more example of good marketing technique. Certainly, in most fields, the Professional Association annual conference and local conference are potent ways to meet people. Now, we may still have to be virtual, and I'm guessing for most of the rest of this year there won't be any in-person national conferences. But even in virtual conferences, if you can present at a conference, let's take another example. Let's say you are a teacher and you are thinking that you could be a really good virtual coach to parents who are going to have a homeschool. If you can give a talk at a homeschooling conference or at a PTA conference, whether it be the national or local or regional, that is going to be a great way to establish credibility and get clients. I am not really a fan particularly of, I don't need to say that. Let me give a couple more specific examples of marketing. So if I were a diversity consultant, I would probably make a little YouTube video that demonstrates, even if I was just talking to 2 or 3 friends, I might invite them outdoors, social distancing, but doing facilitating a discussion on inclusion or diversity, for example, in the face of George Floyd, and make a YouTube video out of it and send that to HR departments, especially those in fields where you have particular expertise. So that if, for example, you are a psychologist, sending your YouTube video to what are called employee assistance programs. These are companies that provide services to companies, or sending it just to sending to just any, even generically any HR department can be helpful. Let's see another example. If you wanted to be a dating coach, you might want to place an ad. And let's say, for example, let's say you're African American. There are African American dating websites. If you're African American and think you could coach African Americans in meeting a romantic partner, writing a great dating profile, how to communicate wonderfully, through Zoom as well as phone, as well as in person, place, if you're going to take out an ad, do it on that highly niched website, on an African American website, or if you're Jewish, JDate or whatever. If you're wanting to be marketing to, let's say, to the wannabes, there's a million wannabe writers or actors. You might, there's something called the California Writers Club, and they have branches all over. You might take out a little ad saying that you are somebody who helps people get published as writers, or get your book completed, or whatever. That could be, or simply something like your own personal memoir. Maybe it's not for money, but coaching writers. Just the focus should be on a highly targeted market. Next, if you're interested in helping people liquidate businesses, so maybe there is, it is the small restaurants that are going out of business. What's going to be left probably are going to be the big chains, the Olive Gardens, the Red Lobsters, etc. And there are restaurant associations. I'm sure there's a California Restaurant Association and a National Restaurant Association, placing an ad on those websites so that people who are going out of business, who are running these restaurants, would be able to see it. So you're not paying for broad marketing. What else? Let me see. I think that's about all I want to say. So, just to summarize, in short, marketing your business is best done through your network, and then after, I did not mention this, afterwards, if you have satisfied customers, go back to them and don't ask for more business. Ask them how they're doing, and might they know somebody else who needs your service. And then if you have to advertise, do it in a highly targeted, niched way. And if you're good enough as a speaker or as a writer, do some writing. So those are some thoughts about how to market and how to become successfully self-employed, even in the time of COVID. And so anyway, this has been How to Do Life. I'm Marty Nemko. You can hear my shows live in prime time, 8:30 a.m. and replayed 6:30 p.m. every Thursday on KSFP 102.5 Public Radio in San Francisco. But the podcast is always available, and it's available on Overcast and on Spotify and the iTunes and Apple Store and all the rest of it. In any event, I do thank you for listening, and or if you're watching on YouTube, for watching. It's Marty Nemko reminding you we find comfort among those who agree with us, growth among those who don't.